You're listening to The Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with Lyndia Grant.
Well, good evening, Radio 1 listeners. Thank you for tuning in to The Lyndia Grant Show here on Spirit 1340 WYCB. We are the oldest gospel radio station in Washington, D.C., and the first contemporary gospel outlet in the United States. Today is Friday, November 17th, 2023. We only about a little over a week before Thanksgiving. Our show is heard throughout the DMV, live at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can tune in and listen to us on YouTube every week. Subscribe, and it'll come to you automatic. Welcome to today's show. My guests today are Attorney Dana Stebbins. She's going to be talking about number 45 and what's going on with him and these other countries. It's called A Threat from Within and Without. So she's doing a two-part series. This week is part one. Now we're going to go to Dr. Julianne Malveaux. She is a nationally known economist, former dean at Cal State LA. She's one of two president emeritus at Bennett College, and she has her PhD in economics. She usually talks to us a little bit about politics and economics. Sometimes politics takes over, but she's president of Push Excel, the youth organization founded by Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson out of Chicago, Illinois. How you doing today, Dr. Julianne?
Oh, I'm fantastic. I'm just laughing. I'm fantastic. But watching these fools is like watching the cartoons. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about Republicans. But I'm not going to dwell on that. There's so much good news and mixed news to talk about. Good news at the top, government is not likely to shut down. On Tuesday night, Republicans passed a funding bill. It's a continuing resolution, and it's a two-part continuing resolution, where if the Senate passes this, which I'm sure they will, we basically have funding through January 19th for part of the government, and for the second part through February 2nd. Mike Johnson, I didn't give him enough credit. He's kind of slick here, but in any case, what we know is this passed 336 to 95. He had to rely on Democrats. 209 of the votes were Democrats. Of course, the Crazy Eight, the Freedom Caucus, voted against because they want major cuts. I expect that between now and January and February, major cuts will be proposed. Among the cuts that we think will be proposed include cuts to Head Start and to other significant social programs. By bifurcating the budget during January 19th, he's got veterans, et cetera, the most critical things in his mind in there, and the rest comes in on the February. So we do expect that early next year we'll be fighting again, but meanwhile people get arrested. As you say, it's just a few, couple weeks, less than a couple weeks away for Thanksgiving, and people really were not looking forward to all that stress. Let me get off the Congress for just a moment, because you and I and many others have some great things to celebrate because we're diabetics. And Tuesday was World Diabetes Day. Senator Raphael Warnock and Senator Republican Kennedy from Louisiana issued a white paper on Tuesday that talked about insulin deserts, places where people could not find insulin or insulin was too highly priced. There are over 800 counties in the United States. That's over 25% of all counties that are insulin deserts. They're mostly in the South. They're mostly heavily black populated. Black people are more likely to get diabetes than others. So they've introduced the Affordable Insulin Now Act that would cap insulin at $35. Of course, this was part of President Biden's legislation, but it's not all across the country. So I want to just commend Senator Warnock for his work, for his bipartisan work. And it's interesting to note when we look at this, we're looking at Georgia, where he says 103 counties in Georgia, Louisiana, which, as you know, is heavily black. These two men were able to come together and get something done. Now let's send in the clowns. Can we all get along? Apparently not in the Congress. You have one man taking his wedding ring off. Now, I guess this is the equivalent of sisters taking their earrings off when they get ready to fight. I wouldn't know. That's been a long time. But this man takes his wedding ring off and basically invites a witness outside. Excuse me? But even you don't want your children watching this. You tell your children to behave, to be the bigger person, and you look at members of Congress behaving like, for want of a better word, I won't mention it. It begins with Jack. But in any case, you're a religious show, so I try not to curse on your program. But I said, can we all get along? And then Kevin McCarthy, the ousted speaker, has been accused of elbowing Congressman Tim Burchett from Tennessee kind of in the kidneys, in the back, and deliberately doing so. A reporter actually witnessed it, and so she's the witness. Matt Gaetz, of course, McCarthy's arch enemy, has filed an ethics complaint. Yeah, I don't want to laugh. Filed an ethics complaint. Burchett said, he said McCarthy wasn't worth it. He said, I'm not giving him that energy. But Gaetz, who cannot stand McCarthy, decided, well, I think I'm going to give him that energy. And so he now has filed an ethics complaint. Can you believe that? An ethics complaint behind, and McCarthy says, oh, the hallway was crowded. Well, the hallway ain't that crowded. You and I, we've all walked through the halls of Congress. You can get by people without bumping into them and elbowing them and all that. These people are just crazy. Now, the biggest news of the week probably, well, the Middle Eastern calamity continues. Palestinian fatalities are estimated over 10,000. We're speaking on Wednesday when Israel has threatened to bomb a hospital. They say that Hamas is hiding beneath the tunnels, but the hospital has people in it. But they've made that threat. Probably somewhere between 200,000 and 250,000 people thronged to Washington on Tuesday for a Support Israel rally. People came from all over the world. I was watching much of it on the news, and people came from all over to say they support Israel. Van Jones, a CNN commentator and social activist, spoke, and he said he was in favor of peace. He said everything has to stop. But when he said everything has to stop, he was interrupted by a crowd that were chanting, "No ceasefire, no ceasefire." Now, many are calling for a ceasefire, especially many of our Palestinian friends. But many Israelis, they say they will not be satisfied until Hamas is wiped out. That's their bottom line. And that bottom line divides a lot of people and is going to have implications, I believe, for President Biden as we move into the 2024 election. And then finally, also on Monday, exciting news for those of us who are history buffs. Those of us who are history buffs I won't say remember, but are familiar with the 24th Army Battalion in Houston that basically had an uprising against the brutal treatment they received. These were black men in uniform who were beaten, treated like just basic crap by the people of Houston, not the people, the police of Houston. When it was told that they were going, that the police were going to raid the military base, the brothers fought back. And this is the only racial melee that had more white people dying than black people. I want to say yay, but that would be non-Christian. So I just said there were only more white people died than black people. In any case, over 100 soldiers were dishonorably discharged, 110 to be exact, 19 were executed. But on Monday, the Army said that 106 years later, the Army said that the convictions were unfair and they set them aside. Some of their relatives may be entitled to benefits. I knew about Houston. I did not know about the pardons, really, set aside convictions until Roland Martin had someone on his program who actually did a film called The 24th, which I highly recommend, which basically dramatizes this episode, this shameful episode in American history. And, of course, we celebrated Veterans Day on Saturday. President Biden was somewhere on Sunday with an official ceremony. And this came on Monday, So people are looking at paying attention to what goes on with veterans. I would simply say in closing, don't forget about the blinding of Isaac Woodward. This was a black man in uniform who was blinded by police as he traveled to South Carolina to come home for the military. He was blinded. And so while we celebrate and appreciate our veterans, let's not forget that the brothers in uniform were lynched, blinded, beaten, etc. That's it for me today.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Julian. We appreciate you. That was great information. Now we're going to go to our commercial break, and we'll be back in a moment.
If it wasn't for my care coach at AmeriHealth, I probably wouldn't be so healthy right now. As a man, we don't get checkups or see a doctor regularly anyways. It's probably just a man thing because none of my partners go either. We know we should, but we just don't, and hope it works out.
So what changed for you?
AmeriHealth assigned me a care coach, somebody that gives one-on-one help, answer questions, explain things, and help set my appointments. She also helped me understand what having high blood pressure really means and ways to manage it so it doesn't kill me. It ain't nothing to play with. If you're a member of AmeriHealth, ask for a care coach. I'm glad I got mine.
At AmeriHealth, if you need a care coach, you can have one. Just call us at 1-877-759-6224 to get connected. 1-877-759-6224. This program is funded in part by the government of the District of Columbia Department of Healthcare Finance. Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Washington and former religion columnist Lyndia Grant.
Who Moved My Cheese is a book about two types of people, those who accept change quickly and move on, and those who hem and haw and try to figure things out. They didn't see change coming and waste valuable time trying to figure out what happened. How did this happen to me? Let's call this group procrastinators. The lesson inside the cheese story is simple. Life is change. Brother said it best when he said, if I accept you as you are, I will make you worse. However, if I treat you as though you are what you're capable of becoming, I help you become that. We must change and keep moving. The Bible tells us to seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be open unto you, ask and it shall be given.
Read more in the religion column of the Washington Informer, an award-winning African-American newspaper. We don't report crime or gossip, just positive news. Pick up the Washington Informer or visit us online at washingtoninformer.com. Call 202-561-4100 for more information.
This is Frank Smith with the African American Civil War Museum in Washington, D.C., located at 1925 Vermont Avenue Northwest on the Green Line. Did you know that a recent study found that children who visit museums do better in school and in life than children who do not? So parents, teachers, and preachers, let's get moving. I promise you, if you bring your children to the African American Civil War Museum, they will be inspired by the images that they see. They will be impressed by our living history reenactors who are always available, and they will be involved in our scavenger hunt that takes them throughout our exhibit. That's the African American Civil War Museum, 1925 Vermont Avenue. Our hours are 10 to 6:30 on weekdays, 12 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. See it. Be inspired.
And we are back. Today is Friday, November the 17th, and we are here now with our second guest. Her name is Attorney Dana Stebbins. I don't go into a long introduction of Dana because she's got such interesting shows every week talking to us about the court system. Dana Stebbins will tell you a little bit about herself when she comes on, but I have known her for over 40 years. And Dana, go ahead and talk to us.
Hi, Lyndia. Good to be back with you.
Yeah.
I will just say, I'm an attorney, but I'm also a watcher of the world because it helps me function. It helps me know what's going on. And so when I first talked to you about the threats to democracy from inside and outside, we spent the first couple of shows talking about the threats from inside the government, inside the United States. And what I'd like to talk to you about today is the external threats, which are increasing every day. So you have a question, or you want me to just start?
Well, no, I want you to go ahead and start talking to us about what is the external threat, because I think we were almost getting ready to talk about that a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
I might be wrong, but I guess that's when the 45 talks about dealing with other countries and things that's been going on out there. Talk to us about what that's about.
Okay, certainly. So there are two major foreign actors who are actively trying to undermine democracy. And they are using people both inside of our government and outside of our government. I want to talk about one today because I don't think I can talk about both of them, but they are Russia and China. Mm-hmm. They are the most active. There are others, but they're the most active foreign actors. So let me just tell you a bit of history first. The United States Intelligence Agency has been aware of Russia's activity since 2009. They released a report, and it recently was declassified, so we can talk about it. It confirmed what most people already suspected, and that was President Vladimir Putin ordered an influence campaign in about 2016 aimed at obstructing and upsetting the United States presidential election. The reason why he did that was because the United States had taken steps to isolate Russia after they annexed Crimea. If you think back before Ukraine, they annexed Crimea. And so the United States effectively isolated them. Putin became angry about that and decided that the government inside of the United States and some of the people outside of the government needed to start thinking the way he wanted them to think. So the report goes on to indicate how he did it and that he is continuing to do it today. He launched a multifaceted campaign to undermine the election and influence the democratic process. He wanted to sow political and social discord in the United States. He wanted to undermine and challenge the American and Western democratic system. He wanted to foster ties and support among powerful voices within the Republican Party in favor of Russia. Now, what you see today and the chaos that has ensued is a result of a misinformation campaign. Russia deploys constant misinformation. It's called misinformation warfare. And because we are so into social media, it's easy for him to influence people through social media. You pick up social media, you read whatever you want to read, and instead of reading the newspaper, you think what you're reading is actually the truth. He uses cyber operations to hack into our government installations and conduct cyber warfare. He's courting influential voters in the conservative movement because they're more easily influenced because they already don't like the liberal, as they call it, system of government we have in the United States. And then he directly targets voters. He sends out information to Republican voters and other conservative voters to influence the way they think and act when it comes to elections. That kind of sums up what Russia has tried to do. Now, they couldn't do it alone. Go ahead.
I was getting ready to ask the kind of things he sends out to voters. I mean, how is that through social media as well?
Yes, but he also does it through, well, now the alt-right, you know what they are, the alt-right, ultra-conservative, white supremacist movement in the United States is fueled largely by information that they received from Russia about the emergence of the minorities in the United States and the fact that the minorities are beginning to outnumber white people, and therefore white people are losing control of the government. That is driving a lot of them, and he sends those messages to his contacts, and others in the alt-right movement and the conservative movement, and then they repeat it. And they go around the country spreading what they've heard. They spread fear of minorities, fear of LGBTQ people, fear of anyone that is not a member of what they consider to be the ruling class in the United States.
That seems to be an easy one for them to do because of the history of our country. It's easy to go right back there because all along you've had people like the Ku Klux Klan hiding in plain view.
Yes.
And I've heard, over the years how even police are considered Ku Klux Klan, but they're not wearing sheets, they're wearing uniforms. So it's so easy to find.
And we saw that on January 6th. You recall that many of the people who were supposed to be guarding the Capitol allowed that to happen. Because they are members of those right-wing groups. They believe that they have just infiltrated our justice system and our police enforcement system, and they are standing there in full view, but they are clothed in the uniform of what we think are the people who are protecting America. So what happens is we get chaos, Lyndia. We get chaos, and we've seen what chaos does. When the Republican majority in the House could not govern anymore because the split between them, the ultra-conservatives, and the mild-mannered, call them, Republicans became so great that they fired the Speaker of the House to get what they want. That causes chaos. And in chaos, you can't govern. You can't rule. You can't put the institutions of democracy to work for you. And so you're constantly fighting the chaos. When the House descended into chaos, the world saw the weakness of the United States, that we are a weak, split, divided nation who cannot really take care of our own because we're so busy infighting and we're in such chaos. And most recently, it happened again. Now we have a war in the Middle East, and we cannot bring ourselves together. I'm saying we because I'm not part of them, but I'm using the word we. Cannot bring ourselves together in the House of Representatives to fund Ukraine, to fund Israel, to fund the Army of the United States and the rest of the armed forces, because we are fighting each other every day. And why are we fighting? I can't really answer that. I've tried to figure that out, but all I know is that when people are not getting their way and they are not winning on a democratic basis, which is the majority rules, then they stoop to causing chaos to prevent anything from happening. It serves their purpose.
And so to me, this in our lifetime, we may not see our country go back to become the strong country that it once was. Because these things don't happen overnight. No more than this happened overnight. It's been slowly building. And so I'm just really sad that we're not the strong country that we once were.
And so am I, which is why I keep talking about this. I don't know the answer to how to fix it, because the same way it took a long time to break, it's going to take a long time to fix. But the more of your listeners who really understand and watch what's going on, the better. The more educated we are about what is happening, the better. Because we do still have elections. While we still have free and fair elections, we should exercise our right to vote on behalf of those people, those institutions who would uphold democracy in the United States and not give in to a dictator or a government that is so chaotic that it can't govern.
Amen. Well, Dana, that sums it up in a nutshell. Talk to us a little bit about what you're going to talk about next week. It'll be Thanksgiving week, and we'll have a lot of listeners home, and we're going to promote the show quite a bit to make sure folks know to listen to part 2. Well, tell us what's going to come up next week.
Okay. I'm going to spend a little time talking about China and how China has also become a player in our country's institutions and politics. But more than that, I'm going to talk about the United States' stature around the world. At a time when the world is so divided and in such crisis, we need the United States to be what it's always been. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and hope that everyone, at a time when we should be giving thanks for the fact that we still have a country which is democratic, that we should support all those institutions and look around us and know what's going on. That's what I'm going to talk about.
All right. Well, we look forward to coming on again next Friday, Thanksgiving weekend, and we're going to talk again to part 2 of Attorney Dana Stebbins. You're listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. We thank you for tuning in. That does it for our show this week. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and never miss an episode. A copy of our show will automatically show up on your computer. Read my column in the Washington Informer newspaper and give us a call at 240-602-6295. Thank you for tuning in. Next week, you'll hear part 2 of our exciting show. And then this Sunday, November the 19th, is International Men's Day. But it's also our regular Men's Day at All Nations. We just happen to fall on International Men's Day. Our guest preacher is the Honorable Judge Alexander Williams. Plus, we're going to have a distinguished panel of men, starting from WJLA TV7 Bureau Chief Sam Ford to Dr. Frank Malone, the founder of 100 Black Fathers. We're going to have Dr. Ben Baruch, the owner and CEO of Everlasting Life, the vegan restaurateur, and a host of other panelists. Our pastor is the Reverend Dr. James Coleman. We're located at number 2 Rhode Island Avenue, Northeast, Washington, D.C., right at North Capitol and Rhode Island Avenue. We hope this show with Dr. Julia Arnalvo and Dana Stebbins have been helpful to you. Earl Nightingale once said, "Words, thoughts, and deeds have a boomerang effect, so be careful what you send out. We do become what we think about." And Scripture says, "My people perish for the lack of knowledge." So think on these things. From the Lyndia Grant Show, I'm your host, Lyndia Grant. Until next week, good day.
Thank you for listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with your host, Lyndia Grant.